Hi, everybody. It's Moira. I wanted to tell you a little bit about the summer 2021 CUNY reading groups I just completed in July. I had a high beginner reading group and an intermediate reading group, and each of those groups met 4 different times in July, and each of the classes was based and focused on one article, a standalone article. So I'm going to give you a little bit of an overview of what we read and the activities that we did connected to the articles. So as I mentioned, each class was an hour and a half, not a very long time, but enough to get going with the reading that we did. I used the same article for both the high beginner group and the intermediate group, taken from News Ella or News ELA, and of course adapted for the level appropriateness. I designed it as instructional reading. I use scaffolding to help students enter into the reading. We did discussion and critical thinking practice based on information from the article. And of course, I pulled vocabulary and we did some practice with that. The reading was mostly outside of class. So while I pulled the vocabulary and we discussed ideas that were connected to the article and I scaffolded for both the ideas and the language, we only read probably a few paragraphs or looked at a few paragraphs of the article in the class, and then the rest of the work was outside of class, the reading. Also, I assigned the reading, but it wasn't homework in the sense of we had something that we came back and did the next time. I might have mentioned some ideas, but this was these summer groups were not did not have homework assignments. So the 4 articles we read were really based in both a concept of something that someone did as well as the person, him or herself. The first article we read was called Maryland Man's Pandemic Project. Manuel Vera had a project during the pandemic of gathering up old bikes, fixing them, and giving them away for free. The second article we read was called These Asian Women Are Chaperoning Others. The others were, generally speaking, older Asian American folks in the Bay Area in Oakland, mostly. And Jessica Oyoung and Katrina Ramos were 2 women instituting this chaperoning program and who started Compassion in Oakland. Third article, American Women Quarters Program. There's going to be a program over the next 4 years, starting next year, highlighting 22 different women on the quarter. And the first 2 are Maya Angelou and Sally Ride. And last was a biography about Ibtihaj Muhammad. She is a former Olympic champion. And so I just wanted to bring the Olympics in a little bit. And so this story was about her accomplishments at the Rio Olympics and also just in general in life. So there's a variety of ideas here, as you can see from the different titles and people to look at. So just a word on News ELA or Newsella articles. The pros are, of course, there are always interesting stories there. They have the levels already created. If you're not familiar with them, they have, generally speaking, about 5 different levels, sometimes even more. The vocabulary in them is useful. There's a lot of good words that students get in these articles. They're easy to access because they're free with an account. And what I do is I transfer the text to a Google Doc or a Word doc so that students can access them more easily, and they're very easy to transfer that way. Oops. So the cons. Sometimes the articles can be too K-12 oriented, so you have to watch out for the language in them. This one is probably the biggest con. For the lowest levels, generally speaking, Newsela articles are never low enough. They're never short enough. The language is generally still too complicated. And so the third bullet point is you often have to tweak or edit. And then even when they are edited for a lower level, I personally find that the language can be clunky, like not really that natural sounding. So those are just some things to think about. I think the pros outweigh the cons. So as for the class itself, the routines that we had, of course, Zoom protocol, which after the first class is very, very quick, but I think bears talking about because we're going to be starting classes in the fall, and just having to remind students about the protocol that we're going to, that is desired on this platform. Classroom questions, things like how do you pronounce or what does it mean? I'll show you how I use that. Pre-reading discussion, vocabulary, and then at the end, the resources and the links to the article and the Google Slides. I'll go more into detail about these in just a moment. So here's the first article that we did, Maryland Man's Pandemic Project, about Manuel Vera. And I'll just quickly show you, this is the link to the article that I just cut and pasted with pictures into a Google document that I could then share the link to students. In this case, I came up with a few sentences at the end for them to work on vocabulary. But mostly this was intact. The article, I didn't change very much of this article. For the lower level, I think I used the second to lowest level for this high beginner group, which seemed pretty, the group itself seemed pretty savvy. Again, in general, targeting sort of the middle of the group. And what I began to do was highlight vocabulary that we used in class that I thought would be essential for students to understand the article in their home at home on their own. So you can see it's much shorter for the lower level and with those highlighted parts. Okay, so the reading group class slides, this will give you an idea of our routines. And I should just say, if you don't already know it, these slides and the articles are available to you. I will give you the links at the end of this presentation. Okay, so always a welcome learning on Zoom, both the muting and unmuting, video, always telling students if you cannot use your video, no problem. I know sometimes internet is not good for that, but that I like to see students. Some rules about Zoom. And again, these are probably things you already do. So we began the very first class with questions for class that I said you can always ask. So just getting the seed planted for empowering students to have these questions for themselves. And then in this case, the agenda with some talking, of course, vocabulary. And this is something I always like to do, true false questions about the article. So just to start, giving them a little bit of an idea and then having them take a few minutes to write something about it using the picture. And then, of course, letting them share that with each other. In an hour-and-a-half class, you can't follow up on everything. So sharing with each other was what we did, and we did not share as a whole group. So then giving information and telling them we're going to learn more about him. So here's the other kind of thing that I did often was come up with ideas that I asked students to write in their notebooks. So really just taking the time to write 4 sentences which connect with the article. So this idea of there is a catch, or the idea of everyone should have a bike, and then asking them to decide if they agree or disagree. Again, always asking them to elaborate and say why. This particular slide set, just to remind you, is the intermediate group. We did intermediate on Wednesday, so I always start with that. Talking about vocabulary if we need to, of course, and that was intentional. And so they agree or disagree, decide on their own, and then they talk to a partner. Again, another place for them to generate language, talk to each other, and also connect with the article. So in the first class, I had them match the definition. You can take a look at this, but basically these are all expressions from the article: be consumed, see the light of day, fix up, and a catch, right? Matching, and then giving them time to write the two together. So I take time for them to write because I think it's really important not just to take a picture. So that's a choice that I make in my classes for time spent. In this class, again, there's some technical language about bikes, but I think everyone is interested in biking. Even if they don't know how to bike, they are often interested. So this is a paragraph from the article, and you can see a lot of vocabulary in there that I didn't put in the vocabulary. Right? That was just very simple, straightforward, but this is very specific, that kind of tier of language that's not everyday use, and you may only use it once, but to understand the article, you need it. So I basically showed a bunch of visuals, and this has become a new favorite thing of mine, the ability to show a visual very easily on Zoom. And make it very clear, right? So we go back to the paragraph. So now they know all the different parts, right? And we can visualize it and also refer to it. And then here's the true false. Again, very simple, but requires them to think critically about if it's true or false and where the proof is. And we've highlighted the proof here. And this is the list of sentences I asked them to use the new vocabulary to fill in. And then I always gave them the resources to link to the article, right? Link to the Wakelet, which I will share with you in just a moment, and then class slides in the Wakelet, right? Oh, I'm sorry, class slides, article, and then an independent reading for intermediate levels that I have on a Wakelet, which I will share with you, of course. So that's what we did for the intermediate class. That is pretty much the type of thing we did every class, you know, a little talking, discussion, critical thinking points, vocabulary, and then reading a little bit of the article, and then that's the end of the class. For the beginner level class, not unsimilar, dissimilar. You know, of course, the beginning here, there was some confusion about which class was which. Learning on Zoom is the same. Questions for the class. You noticed in the intermediate, we didn't use this right away. I just planted the seed. But for the high beginner, I asked them immediately to write the sentences in their notebook. Because I think this is language that only serves students from the very beginning very well. How do you pronounce blah, blah, blah? What does blah, blah, blah mean? How do you spell blah, blah, blah? So they would tell me what they wrote, say it back to me, and then we practiced. And we practiced with vocabulary that we were going to look at from the article. And it takes a little while, but students, ask them who wants to ask a question. They're a little shy, but they do it. And then I jumped a little too quickly. We go to what does it mean, right? What does number 1 mean? And generally speaking, I'm going to put that in here because usually I say, how do you pronounce number, so that they don't have to worry about pronouncing. They can just use a number. So of course, outgrow is a good word. And so if you see visually, again, I loved using visuals. Child is riding a tricycle. Next child, you outgrow the tricycle, go to the 2-wheeler, and then a 5-speed bike. Talking, meeting, vocabulary, same type of thing. Tell me about this picture. Best plus oriented, but a great just opener for what they see and what they can tell you. Telling a little bit about the article, learning more. So same thing for the next level, but only 3, and not using a catch that's not in this article, and making the sentences slightly easier. Same idea as what I did with the intermediate. And instead of agree, disagree, yes or no, sometimes that's not necessary, but we use that. And then they talk to their partner also. Tell your partner why, right? So this is what I did with the low level. We looked at a few sentences from the article, not necessarily the beginning, and talked a little bit about it, discussed the ideas, and then we went to the article and we started from the beginning. This is more towards the end of the article, but it gave me the chance to talk about your memory of riding a bike, and some people never learned to ride a bike. Resources and questions. Okay, so again, this is generally what we did every class. And you can see that in the class slides for the Asian women, for the American Quarters program, and I'll just give you a brief look at the American Quarters program because, again, just thinking about how valuable visuals are, right? From everything from head side, tail side, which is in the article, right? Of course, to this is the picture from the article in Newsela, but then finding other pictures that students might relate to or know about, right? As well as pulling pictures from, this is the representative from California who instituted or introduced the bill for this idea. Jen Psaki is mentioned in the article, and actually somebody knew who she was in the class. Harriet Tubman is mentioned because of the dollar bill, her face on the dollar bill. Andrew Jackson is of course mentioned in connection to that also. And so then just being able to reference again who this person is. The last article about Ibtihaj Muhammad was also interesting, and these are the class slides that I will share with you. So let's go back. Here we go. The Wakelets, I really like these Wakelets. This is the link to the Wakelet for the high beginner group. And we have Manuel Vera, the article, the class slides, Jessica Oyoung and Katrina Ramos, the article, the class slides, the American Women Quarters article, slides, and Ibtihaj Muhammad article and class slides. For the intermediate, same thing. Just click on that link. It's an open link, should be public. If you have any trouble, let me know. This one is in reverse order. We've got Ibtihaj article, class slides, women quarters, class slides, article about the Asian women chaperoning others who feel unsafe, article and class slides, and Manuel Vera. If you are interested in all the Wakelets that I have created, those are 2, you can join my Wakelet or follow my Wakelet, I suppose. There are independent reading resources on this Wakelet for beginners, for intermediate level, and I have the beginners NRS 1, intermediate, which I believe is 4 through 6. Yeah, so it's a wide range there. And then, so there are 3 levels, and then the high beginner and low intermediate. So that's the 2, 3. So 1, 4, 6, and 2, 3, just to give you another idea. So there are other Wakelets, workforce vocabulary that I drew from Learning Chocolate, and then of course the reading groups, just to give you an idea. Okay, so I hope that gives you an idea of some things we did and some ideas for your own teaching. And if you have any questions, as you always know, probably best to email me at cunyadultliteracyprogram@gmail.com, because a lot of my resources are connected to the Gmail and the drive there. So I can connect more easily with those. Thanks, everybody. Hope to see you soon. Take care.